happy Sunday! I'm Chelsea from thestudentarchitect.com, which is an online space for architects and architecture students. If you'd like to see more tips, tricks, and helpful guides, then head on over to thestudentarchitect.com. So today we're going to talk about interview questions for freelance interviewees. So this is geared more towards architecture freelancers, but if you're in another industry, then these questions may give you some ideas for some things that might be related to your industry. So if your excitement of potentially being hired by a new client is slowly converting over to fear and anxiety from having to now go through the interview process, hopefully this will help kind of turn things around. So as a freelance interviewee, you have the choice to actually position yourself as a passive participant, or you can actually take the reins and play an active role in how the interview process plays out. And you have to remember that you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. You want to make sure that this is a firm or a company that you want to work with, a client that you want to work with, and that you have similar values, you have similar goals, and these are all things that you should be finding out through this interview process to see if you guys are both a good fit for each other. So yes, they will make the initial decision to decide whether or not they want to work with you, but you can always decline their offer. You're not tied into anything until you sign the contract. So if it helps kind of ease the tension a little bit, ease the anxiety a little bit, you can choose to play an active role in the interview process. So here are some essential questions to ask your interviewer or interviewers to see if they're a good fit for you. So one of the first questions might be, where are most of your projects located? This is important to know for so many reasons. Do they have projects in multiple states across the country, across the world? Do they stick to one small town? This will influence potential design decisions, codes that are applicable to your project, and a whole host of other variables. And a follow-up to this question could be what your responsibilities are in terms of code research and other things like that. Now, of course, as architects and designers, we should always be aware of codes and regulations, but it's important to know if that's your sole responsibility or if there will be some oversight there. The next question could be, what types of projects do you work on? So you've likely been hired to work on one specific project, but hopefully this will turn into a recurring client that you can work on with many projects in the future. So for example, maybe you've been hired to work on a residential project, but you looked at their website before your interview and saw that they also do commercial projects. So that would be a valid question to ask if you could possibly be working on commercial projects in the future, especially if that's not an area that you're comfortable in. So you can ask if they expect to need help on different types of buildings in the future. The next question is, do they do everything in-house or do they outsource certain aspects of their projects? So do they design millwork, cabinetry, trim details, custom kitchens, built-ins, bathrooms, or is it more diagrammatic? Do they work with interior designers or engineers? Or do they have a team of other people to tackle those tasks? So that could be useful to know what their process is like and what level of detail you need to apply to certain aspects of the project. The next question would be, what stages of the project will you be involved in? Will the projects pretty much be completed up to design development, or will you be involved in schematic design work? Or will you just be working on construction documents? Will you be designing or just inputting somebody else's designs? Will you be involved in construction administration? Is that something you've done before and are you comfortable with it? So these are really important questions to be asking to know what your responsibilities are going to be while working with this client. The next question could be, what is your process like? Do they have templates for project files, title blocks? Are they organized? How do they organize their folders? Do they have established drawing standards? Do they have checklists for project oversight for different phases of the project? So you can interpret their response in a couple of different ways. So if you're more experienced, then you could see their lack of organization as a way to impart your wisdom on them and help them out to develop these processes to make them more efficient, more productive, and more accurate, to have more of that oversight and make their sets more consistent. Alternatively, if you're not as experienced and you're looking to learn from somebody who does have this process all set up and ready for you, then this might not be a great firm to learn from. And in that case, you might want to seek out a client that can provide you more guidance and direction. And if they do have established drawing standards, templates, and checklists, that may be a good sign that they value productivity and quality, and they know what they're doing. And these are great firms to learn from. And the next question would be, if they haven't provided this already, is to ask them if they can provide a model PDF project set. So looking at a drawing set that they consider to be their gold standard can help you in so many different ways. It can help you understand if your skills are up to par with what they're looking for, if they produce drawings that you're not used to producing, if there are ways that you can improve their drawings because you're noticing mistakes or things that they could have done better or differently. It just gives you an overall idea of how they like to produce their drawing sets, what drawings they include, the graphics that they use, how they show their drawings, and things like that. Next, I would ask them what programs that they use. Now, this is a really important question because you need to make sure that you're using compatible software. So maybe your client uses AutoCAD, but you use Revit. Is your client okay with you creating your projects in Revit and then exporting them into AutoCAD? Or would they prefer you to work in AutoCAD? Maybe you have Revit LT, but your client needs you to have the full version of Revit so that you can use work sharing tools or advanced filters or things like that. That could be an issue. Are you able to invest in a new type of software that's so much more expensive than what you're originally using? Maybe you're using Revit 2021, but your client's using Revit 2022. That's a compatibility issue there because you can't downsave your files. So are you able to access Revit 2022? That's a good conversation to have. So the conclusions that you might find when you have these conversations could be absolute deal breakers for either one of you. So this is definitely a good conversation to have early on when you're deciding whether or not you're a good fit for each other. The next question would be to ask them what their weekly time commitment from you would be. So if you're an established freelancer, then you likely have multiple clients that you work with consistently, or maybe you're constantly picking up projects here and there. And so it's probably likely that you're not available 40 hours a week to work with this client. So you need to be upfront about what your availability is, if it varies, if you consistently can give them 15, 20 hours a week, something like that. Or maybe your schedule is wide open and you can provide them 40 hours a week. That's definitely a conversation that you need to have. So a follow-up to this question is something that I like to ask all of my clients, which is to ask them if you can set up weekly meetings when you're working together. So over the years, I've found that the best way to keep track of projects and to manage expectations is to have consistent meetings with my clients, and I tend to have them weekly. And I suggest that we have them weekly so that we can stay on top of everything. It can even just be for 10 minutes a week, or if you need longer, then you could do an hour a week. So maybe you have this weekly meeting on Monday mornings where you can tell your client what your availability is for the week. You can set expectations, make sure that projects are staying on track, and you can resolve any issues that might come up. They can be quick and it benefits everybody. Next, you can ask how they prefer to communicate. So if you're working on a freelancing platform, they may have a messaging board for each project that you have with your client, and maybe you or they prefer to communicate through that messaging board. But maybe they have their own internal system where they use Teams or Slack, or maybe they just prefer to use email. Next, this is kind of in the same vein, but asking them how they prefer you to send files. So your project files will probably be too big to send on those freelancer messaging platforms, so you'll probably need another way to do that. Do they like you to use WeTransfer? Would they like you to directly upload to their cloud system like OneDrive or Google Workspace or Dropbox or something like that? But if your client prefers to use Dropbox, keep in mind that to share files with other people through Dropbox, you actually have to have your own storage space as well. So if that's not something that you can financially afford right now, then that's something that you might want to talk about with your potential new client. Now, the last question I would ask is much more personal, and it's definitely something that I ask at the end of the interview once I get a feel for who they are as a person and how they are as a company. So I like to ask what your views are individually or as a company on this issue. Insert whatever issue that you care about in that sentence. So this to me is one of the most important questions, and their answer carries so much weight. So think about something that is really important to you and a value that's a real core value of yours, and something that you would like your potential new client to share with you. So maybe you're very passionate about social justice, racial inequality, LGBTQ plus issues, women's rights, environmental issues, things like that, that their answer could influence how you feel about working with them. So you can limit it to just one specific issue, or you can ask a couple of different issues. I wouldn't ask more than 3, I don't think, but I would try to narrow it down to your most core issues that are so important to you, and if they answer in a way that is opposite of your views, then that could be a good indication that they're not a good client for you. So maybe you're interested in the environment and you want to see what this firm is doing to lessen their impact. Are they using sustainable materials? Is anybody at the company LEED or Passive House certified? Do they use energy efficient products? Do they allow their office employees to work from home to cut down on emissions? Things like that. Or for another example, if you identify as somebody who is LGBTQ plus or a person of color, you need to make sure that you're working with people that make you feel safe, valued, and supported. And if you're not getting that feeling from this company or this individual, then it's okay to walk away. Now, I know this question can make a lot of people cringe, and most people will shy away from this question because they don't want to mix these issues with life and work. But actually, it's so much more important to make sure that your work values, your life values carry into your work, and the same with the businesses that you work with and that you support. I would say prepare yourself for different answers and try to remain calm. If they say something that you don't agree with, then you can kindly say, I don't think this is going to work out, but thanks for meeting with me, or something like that, and just end the call, and you never have to see them again. And hopefully you'll receive a positive response that'll leave you knowing that your potential client is a great fit for you. In a way, you're teaching them that it's okay to talk about these things openly and in workplace settings, and you're showing them that it's not a hindrance to be vocal about your stances on certain issues. I'm happy to say that I have only received positive responses to this question, and it's actually opened up the opportunity for my potential clients to share personal stories with me so that we can share this really personal connection with each other that we otherwise wouldn't have had. And I can guarantee you that they will leave that interview remembering that question, and that you will not leave their mind for probably the rest of their day. If you feel safe in doing so, I encourage you to challenge the norms and do things differently. Take charge of your interview process, ask questions that are important to you, and stay true to your convictions. I know interviews can be stressful, but it gets a lot less intimidating when you can take some of that control back and get more experience. I wish you the best of luck with your interview. You got this. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope that you found this video helpful, and if you did, please hit that like button, and if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe. It really helps out my channel, and it lets YouTube know that you like videos like this, and they'll give you more of them. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next Sunday.